Hello, everyone. Welcome again to How to Think. I have a very special guest today, Dr. Kent Hovind, and we're going to be covering his top five arguments for young Earth creation and maybe covering some topics on King James. Hey, Dr. Hovind, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good to be with you, brother.
So, just a little bit of background on me. I was an atheist for 37 years. I was part of the, mainstream education system. And so essentially I had never heard any of the arguments from the other side. So definitely what I knew of the Bible or what little I read of it uh, certainly looked like a 6 day creation period to me, which of course, based on what people were teaching me in school, I thought it was ridiculous. So I never actually heard any arguments from the other side till I got saved, and then somebody recommended your creation seminars to me. That's when I heard of it, and now I am definitely a young Earth creationist.
Oh,
So
amen.
yeah. So thank you very much. Very important to
Welcome,
me.
welcome, welcome to the club.
And so would love for you to just present on some of that and just kind of see where the discussion goes.
Well, thank you, sir. It's an honor to be with you. My name's Kent Hovind. I've been a Baptist preacher now 50 years. I taught high school science and math for 15 years. My journey started when I was 16 and gave my heart to the Lord. I started reading my Bible, like you mentioned, and I realized, wait a minute, somebody's lying here because I was majoring in math and science. My dad was an engineer, Marine, World War II sergeant, only survivor of his platoon. My mom was a public school teacher. My next oldest brother was a mechanical engineer. My second brother, a public school teacher. So I come from a family of engineers and teachers, and I always liked learning. I like science. And I was learning all the science, ended up teaching high school science and math for 15 years. And I said, somebody's lying about the age of the earth. Because all you got to do is add up the dates in the Bible. I got a chart right here that I made. Let's see. The Bible says very clearly that Adam was 130 when his son was born, Genesis chapter 5. And then it says he lived for 800 years. I said, wait, how do you live to be 930 years old? Well, simple. You don't die, okay, and you'll make it. But if you add up all the dates of how old they were in the Bible when their son was born, and they're given in chapter 5, and then chapter 11 takes up the story after the flood. You continue the chart here down to Joseph. It gives all the numbers right there. The Bible dates clearly add up to the world being about 6,000 years old, not millions of years old. It was created about 4,000 BC. And this is what the Christians have taught for centuries. It really wasn't until about the 1700s when some people started teaching the earth is much older than that. That really began the controversy, which led right up to people like idiots like Charles Darwin saying, well, if we've got millions of years to work with, maybe animals can change. And he writes his stupid book, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. So it really, the age of the earth, adding to the Bible millions of years, is what really opened the door to allow those who do not like the Bible to claim, animals could have changed from one kind of animal to another. And we just simply never see that. So it was a real conflict for me at first as a young Christian. And I fell into the trap for a while of what's called the day age theory. Maybe each of those days is millions of years. Then somebody said, wait a minute, on day 3, he made the uh, plants. On day 4, he made the sun. If those days are millions of years, that's going to be kind of hard on those plants waiting for the sun to come up, don't you think? Yeah. And then day 5 and 6, he made the birds and bugs, and they pollinate the plants. It doesn't work. Plus, was God telling them to work 6 days and rest a day? Was he saying you got to work 6,000 years before you rest 1,000? No. Anyway, so the Bible is clear. They are literal, 6 literal 24-hour days, just like we have today. And that led to a conflict in my heart, anyway, in my mind. What about all the stuff I'm learning in science class? How do you handle all this? But anyway, that's my story, brother. I'm a young Earth. Well, 6,000 is not young. 6,000 is a long time. I mean, it's hard to think about Columbus 500 years ago trying to find this place. 500 is a long time. 6,000 is a real long time. So I'm an old Earth creationist. I think it's old, like 6,000 years old, but not billions.
Yeah, and a lot of it starts not adding up. And definitely for me, probably one of the most convincing things I heard was the soft dinosaur tissue. 'Cause that
Mhm.
just throws a wrench in everything dinosaurs are millions of years old. Especially found your arguments on that to be compelling. And then I
Mhm.
think recently they even found a trilobite with soft tissue. So it's a 300-year-old, 300 million year old fossil with soft tissue. Yeah, okay.
A lot of creatures have been found that still have soft tissue, and the Bible's pretty clear. Let me go to slide number 19 here. The dates in the Bible add up to the world being created about 4,000 years before Christ, or 6,000 years ago. There was a big flood 4,400 years ago, 1,600 years after the creation. And the flood is what made all the fossils. Animals aren't fossilizing today. How many animals died in the last 5 years? Colonel Sanders killed a whole bunch himself, didn't he? So there billions of animals died in the last 5 years, and none of them fossilized. So fossilization at all is a rare phenomena. It looked like it all happened at one time in one big flood. That's what the Bible would indicate. So to find a dinosaur bone with a soft tissue or red blood cells or indication it's only been in the ground 4,400 years. That I can believe. To believe it's been there for millions of years is just not believable. Jesus came about 2,000 years ago, and here we are today. One of the illustrations I use to try to get people to comprehend how much a billion is, that those big numbers do not fit in the human brain. If I made a chart to represent the 6,000 years of creation and laid it across 2 lanes of traffic in Boston, my chart would be 20 feet long. Okay? Every foot represents 300 years. The evolutionists say billions of years. Well, it's 2,900 miles across the United States. If every foot is 300 years, every time you take a step, you're going about 600 or 700 years. 300 years per foot, 25 years per inch. That's that every mile would be 1.5 million years. This line shows what 4.6 billion years would look like. That's what they just throw these numbers out. Yeah, 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth formed. Stop, stop, stop. At 300 years per foot, that's clear across the United States. That's insane, okay?
Yeah.
Just getting across South Dakota is going to take you, let's see, 300 years per foot. It's going to take 600 million years just to get across South Dakota. It is just, the human brain doesn't absorb these big numbers. If 70 miles an hour, that's 102 feet a second, it'd go 30,000 years every hour to drive from Washington to Boston at 30,000 years per hour. After 41 hours, it would take you to go 2,900 miles. When you finally get to Boston, Pittsfield, Massachusetts, 4.4 billion years later, you still got 219 million years just to get across Massachusetts. When you finally get to Boston, then you still got a long way to get across Boston, 17 miles. Well, it's going to take you 90,000 years just to get across town. When you finally get to the other side of Boston, 4.6 billion years later, you finally get to, you can start a reasonable chart, and we end up here in 2024. Columbus discovered America 21 inches ago on this scale. Let's see, Jesus died 6.7 feet ago. Noah's flood was 14 feet ago, and the creation was 20 feet. So the difference between 6,000 and 4.6 billion is huge. Congress doesn't have a clue about this, okay? But it's a big number, a lot of big difference between 6,000 and 4.6 billion. They don't have a clue. To them, billion, billion, trillion, what's the big deal? So anyway, I think the fact that these numbers don't fit in the human brain allows the atheist to say, well, just dinosaurs lived 700, pick a number. Your brain can't process that big number. So yeah, the Bible clearly teaches about 6,000, not billions of years.
Yeah. And they and they use the God of the gaps argument, right? I say that they use the billions of years of the gaps. So
Yep.
whatever can't be explained, well, must have been millions of years, right? If
Right.
you look at it, it's because there was so much time that it could take place in that amount of time, and they just keep increasing the amount of time, especially if any amount of evidence comes out that that type of thing couldn't happen. I'm like, well, just give it enough time.
Yeah. What the problem is, they don't want God telling them what to do. That's the real problem.
Yeah.
They don't like this book because it has some rules like thou shalt not. They don't like those rules. So let's deny he exists. Let's deny he made it. It's stupid. Okay.
Yeah, I made a video about God not supporting slavery.
Mhm.
So I kind of did a careful careful walkthrough of the text, really paying
Right.
attention to the details. And people are just, they don't like it. They're mad at that video. Got a ton of comments. They're like, and Christians and atheists alike are
Yeah.
ganging up on me saying, no, God loves slavery. Like, but it's because they're attached to um, wanting to have an argument
Right.
for rejecting God, right? If God's a terrible monster and he supports slavery and all this, then I don't have to believe in him. And
Mhm.
it's kind of similar with the young Earth arguments as well.
Well, plus it makes it where there's only two choices. Somebody made the world or nobody made it. It made itself. And that's really what the evolution theory teaches. Nobody made it. It made itself. There is no God to be accountable to. Okay. And so if you start taking away time from them, take away their billions of years and say, hey, the earth cannot be billions of years old for the following reasons, A, B, C, D, E. Boy, they get angry because the time is their pacifier to keep their mouth shut, for keep them from crying. Because they like the idea that no, nobody made the world. It's billions of years old. It made itself. Billions of years will not help. Okay. More time will hurt their cause because the longer you wait, the more things fall apart. There's, there's laws, physical science laws, the laws of entropy. Things get worse with time, not better. But they somehow think, wow, if we had time, an amoeba could change into a human and a whale. This is the chart they use in their public schools. Public school textbook. Here we go. No, not that one. There. Okay. The family tree. Okay. Here we have a protozoa at the bottom, a single-celled creature turning into everything. Here's the humans and the whales and the bears and the elephant and the camel and the sunflower. It all had a common ancestor. This is real stupid, extremely stupid. This is a propaganda poster. This is not science. But this, they say, how could you turn an amoeba to a whale? How does that happen? They'll say, well, give it enough time. You stop the argument right there. There isn't enough time. There are lots of ways to prove it can't be billions of years old. But in their mind, we know it can't happen walking across the street in Boston, but if you give it from Washington State to Boston, it could happen. Like that's going to solve the problem. Just plain dumb.
And they've never observed it, right? There's never been a change of kind, even with looking at bacteria. They've never seen a bacteria become something
Next
other
line,
than a
sir.
bacteria, just
Right.
mutate.
There are creatures like bacteria that have 8-hour generation time. They're born, grow up, get married, have babies in 8 hours. Human generation time is more like 25 years, average or whatever it is. So you got to wait 100 years to see 4 generations. With bacteria, you get 3 generations a day. So if we're going to see evolution, we certainly should see it in the single-celled creatures, bacteria or protozoa or something like that, amoeba. We don't see it. They've even tried to make them change, nuke them and microwave them and X-ray them and slap them around and do everything you can think of to try to make them change. I've said for years, not all the scientists in the world could not make a bacteria. You can't make one in the laboratory. Get all the chemicals together necessary. Put a frog in a blender. Turn it on puree for about 30 seconds, and then let me see you reassemble the frog. Here you have all the components for the frog in a blender. Put it back together, make a frog. You can't do it. But they think it happened by chance. This is real, real, real stupid. And I feel sorry for them. You'd have to go to college for years to be that stupid, to believe, a single cell made itself. What I cover in my seminar, where they hate me for this, but I say, look, we got to divide this. When you say, do you believe in evolution? I say, we got to divide this up into what do you mean by that word? Because the word is too slippery. Let's see, I got stuff here on, here. Where did my hyperlink go? Anyway, I say there we go, 6 different, slide number 39. I got moved way up there. Okay, 39, enter. I give the definition of evolution. I say there's really 6 different meanings to the word. You'd have to have cosmic evolution. Where did time, space, and matter come from? They want to skip right over that. They say, well, there was a big bang. That doesn't answer the question. Where did matter come from? To say all the matter in the universe fit in a dot smaller than a period is stupid. Now, if you wish to believe that, that's great, but that's a religious belief. It's not scientific. Then you have to have chemical evolution. Well, see, nothing else matters if you can't get past cosmic evolution. They just say, well, there was a big bang. Stop, stop, stop. What banged? Where was it? Where did space come from? And if this, where did matter or energy or space or even time, where did time come from? If your Big Bang was 13.72772 billion years ago, what was before that? Where was time? So we go through all the quotes from the atheists admitting, European Space Agency, time, space, and matter all began with the Big Bang. In a fraction of a second, the universe grew from smaller than a single atom to bigger than a galaxy. This is real stupid, right? You have to imagine time. Yes, where did time, space, and matter come from? Well, Big Bang. And the universe grew. You mean you're going to keep adding energy to keep these particles going? A single atom, bigger than a galaxy, still expanding today? Well, then I got some questions. Where did time come from? Where did space come from? Where did matter come from? Where did the energy come from? Matter moving faster than the speed of light? This, I think somebody's just seeing if they can get people to be gullible enough to believe something so dumb. And more energy is being added to make it keep expanding. Where's that coming from? They just want to skip right over that. They'll say, well, evolution really happens once life gets here. Well, then you don't have a good theory. They live in a fantasy world. You really think all the matter in the universe fit in a dot smaller than an atom? That's not science. It's imagination. Just think, you have to be really smart to believe all that. I think you have to be really stupid. All the Himalaya mountains fit in that dot. All 8 billion people in the world fit in that dot. Water, all the oceans fit in there. Water can be compressed, but you have to, let's see, you have to have 3 million atmospheres of pressure. One atmosphere is 14.7 pounds on every square inch. 3 million times that much to squeeze water, 7%. So you can squeeze a gallon of water by 7% if you put 3 million atmospheres of pressure on it. Where'd that pressure come from? Gravity of the water. The water molecules are attracted to each other so much that they squeeze themselves into nothing. 333 million cubic miles of water on the Earth. You really think it fit in a dot? The Earth itself, 4.4 million miles in diameter radius. Let's see. The Earth itself, you think all that fit in the water? All the cows in the world fit in there. I do this a lot when I'm driving around town with somebody. Wow, look at all these trees around us. Huge forests in southern Alabama. All of them came from a dot, smaller than an atom. You can tell them all, I said they are stupid for believing it. They should be ashamed of themselves. And that's just the Earth. You want to get all the other planets? Earth is pretty tiny compared to the big planets. You want to squeeze all them in a dot. And the sun? And the sun is pretty tiny compared to the big stars. I mean, our sun's not much compared to the big boys. It's stupid to believe the Big Bang Theory. Time's not going to help them. I'll give them quadrillions of years. A dot of nothing is not going to explode and make a universe with people in it. It's just not going to happen. It violates all the laws of thermodynamics. Anyway, we can go for days on that topic. But I cover, that's just the first of the 6 different levels or meanings of the word evolution. Here they are right here. Cosmic evolution, number 1. Then you have to have chemical evolution, because they say the Big Bang produced some hydrogen, maybe some helium, a little tiny bit of lithium. Okay, we got 92 elements. Where'd all the other elements come from? Can you make gold and silver out of hydrogen gas? I'd like to learn how to do that. Then you have to have stars forming. Nobody has ever seen a star form. We see stars blow up once in a while, a nova or a supernova. We never see one form. And if there's an explosion and the particles are flying away from each other like fragments on a hand grenade, how are they going to get together out there in space? The longer you wait, the further apart they get. How are they going to get together to make a lump to make a star again? Then origin of life, organic evolution. That's a real problem for them. It doesn't happen. And then number 5, macroevolution, where an animal changes to a different kind of animal. That's just simply never been seen. They can imagine that it might happen over billions of years. Well, you can imagine all you want, but it's not observable science. Number 6, Microevolution. Now that one happens. Variations within the same kind happen all the time, but they're limited. And that's what they just plain don't get, brother. I wish they could. Let's see, let me get back here. I tell them, look, dogs always make baby dogs every time. There's nearly 400 now varieties of dogs in the world, and they probably had a common ancestor called a dog. It could be the dog, the wolf, and the coyote have a common ancestor. It's still a dog, a type animal. That doesn't prove it's related to sunflowers. But these dumb family trees that they make, they say, oh, yes, boys and girls, here, family tree, right here. Here we have, let's see, the human, the bird, the ladybug, and the dinosaur, and the frog having a common ancestor. This is the stuff our students face by the time they're in third grade. Maybe before they're teaching them this stuff. I say, look, there's 366 varieties of hummingbirds. Who'd have thunk it? They probably had a common ancestor called a hummingbird. Does that prove that people and all these animals are related? No. This is nothing but artwork. It's not a family tree. It's a propaganda poster. That's all it is. Protozoa slowly turned to fish, and then amphibians, and finally humans. Here we are. We made it. Anyway, go ahead, brother.
Well, I'd say the interesting part about the dog example is if you think about it, it kind of accelerates natural selection, right? Because if say an animal was born in the wild and it had an adaptation, well, then it has to go through so long and pass on its genes and all that. But because people manufacture the events to make the animal survive and selectively choose those traits themselves, it would take a much longer time if it were happening in the wild without intelligent intervention. And
Mm-hmm.
even with that acceleration, you still get a dog.
Right. That's all.
Chihuahua
That's
could breed with a Great Dane if you wanted to.
theoretically, yeah.
Yeah.
Might be some mechanical problems there, but certainly genetically it would work.
Yeah.
See, natural selection, they don't get it. They use this as evidence for evolution. It's in all the textbooks, natural selection. But they're saying if animals are born and one is stronger than the rest, he's more likely to live. Or one is smarter than the rest, he's more likely to live. That was Darwin's entire argument over his whole book. Let's see, how big is this book? 670 some pages. He says, yep, nature selects. Here's the title page. The origin of species by means of natural selection, or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life.
Mm.
I agree, Charlie. Nature will generally select the strongest to survive, not always. If the lion chases a herd of deer, probably the slowest one's not going to make it and the fastest ones are going to get away. But it's still a deer. It's not going to change it to anything. Like this guy said, creationists have no argument with natural selection. All it does is select from something that's already existing. It doesn't have a creative process. Natural selection works. It does not promote speciation. It's not a creative force. It's not going to create a thing. That's all it does is select something. Artificial selection is where the farmer decides which ones are going to breed and which ones are going to survive. And he takes out the weaker, lets the stronger ones survive. That's artificial selection with people doing it. Natural selection is nature doing it. They're both selection process. They're not going to create a thing. Natural selection can only act on properties that already exist. It cannot create anything. So natural
What are you
selection is
selecting from?
selecting from an existing population.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah, those are definitely compelling. And just even going back to the everything started from something the size of an atom. Well, they're still faced with the problem. Either the atom was eternal and always exists, because where did it
Right.
come from?
Right.
So they have to admit that something was eternal. We just believe that that's God because we believe in the law of causality, as that's the most observable law that we can experience every second of our lives.
Right. Something had to cause it. See, here's the difference. Christians admit that we believe by faith God created the world. Where'd God come from? Nobody knows. I don't think we can know. But they got the same, worse problem. Where did time, space, matter, and energy come from? See, they will not admit that they have a religion. That's why I constantly call evolution a religion. It's a religious cult. It's a dangerous religious cult. That's all it is. It's not science. And they get angry at me for that because they don't want to admit that. But I show clearly we don't see any of this stuff happening, guys. You imagine it SpongeBob style, but that's not science. They just don't get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, you wanted to talk about some proofs of a young Earth. Was that the?
Yeah, I think one of them that is pretty compelling and probably one of the most common objections would be the dating methods. So radiometric and carbon dating
Mhm.
and this and that. I think that's probably one of the most common. Well, we know because of these dating methods. Well, I think those dating methods are very flawed. Would love if you could cover that.
Sure. I point out, first place, time is not going to help. If you give them billions or trillions or quadrillions of years, it's still not going to help. Okay, their theory is still devoid of any science. But they always take carbon dating or something like that. I say, well, guys, first of all these modern dating methods, carbon dating, carbon-14 decays to carbon-12, potassium decays to argon, lead, uranium decays to lead. There's 5 or 6 different radioactive elements that they try to use to determine the age of something based on a decay rate. Carbon date, all of them were invented in the last 70 years. They were teaching the Earth is old way before that. See, carbon, you have carbon and nitrogen on the periodic table. That all came from hydrogen, from the Big Bang. And where the sunlight strikes the nitrogen atoms and knocks them around a little bit and changes them to carbon-14. Normally, nitrogen is 14, atomic weight of 14. So the carbon gets slapped around and becomes nitrogen gets slapped around, becomes carbon-14, which doesn't like to be carbon-14. It wants to decay back to carbon-12. So after studying a sample, they say, well, it takes so many years for half of the atoms to blow up and explode and turn back like they want to be. That's called the half-life. So if I gave you a pile of carbon-14 with 100 atoms, if you wait 5,730 years, half of them are likely to turn back to carbon-12. So they say, well, we know that plants are breathing in carbon dioxide. Carbon, wow, some of it's radioactive. Sure is. And the plants turn that carbon dioxide into part of their tissue, whether it's fruit or leaves or stems or something. And then animals come along and eat the plants. And so they get some of the radioactive carbon in their body. No question. I agree. There's a natural, logical chain to follow how carbon-14 ended up from the air into your body. No, I bet during your lifetime, you've either eaten some plants, or you've eaten some animals that have eaten plants. Have you ever done that? Like
Of course.
every meal, everything you eat, okay? So carbon dating, here we go, on the geologic column. Here's an illustration that might help some of those with the brain to try to understand. If you walked into a room and found a candle burning on a table, and I asked you the question, when was it lit? How long was it burning? You say, I don't know, it was burning when I got here. This is the problem with carbon-14. You get a sample of, say, an old log, which should certainly have carbon in it, it's a tree. And you'd like to know when the tree died, or when the tree, as soon as it dies, it stops taking in any more carbon-14. So whatever it had is still decaying. It's decaying while it's alive too. You can take a Geiger counter and hear the clicks of the atoms decaying. It's radioactive decay. But once it dies, it stops taking in any more. So what they're really measuring is how much does this log have compared to how much is in the air. If it has half as much as is in the air, you say it's been dead for one half-life, 5,730 years. But there's some real serious problems here. I've asked, a candle illustrates it. I say, how long has this candle been burning? I don't know. Well, let's do some science, empirical science, measure, test, demonstrate. Let's measure how tall it is. So we get out the ruler and we measure and find out the candle is 7 inches tall. Is that enough to tell me when it was lit? No. Let's measure how fast it burns. We time it with an Olympic stopwatch and we get down to the nearest bazillionth of a second. We find out the candle's burning an inch an hour. Nobody argues. Here's our 2 facts. It's 7 inches tall. It's burning an inch an hour. When was it lit? You can't tell me unless you make some assumptions. Okay? How tall was it to start with? Has it always burned at the same rate? Has there been no contamination? Maybe a breeze was blowing through there, which might make it grow faster. That would change the rate of decay. See, with radiocarbon dating or any of these dating methods, you have to assume that you know how much was in it. They say, well, the atmosphere today has 0.0000765% carbon-14, real tiny amount. So all the plants should have the same amount. Maybe, Maybe they don't. Maybe they're different in some areas of the world. Did we lose signal here?
Yeah, no.
Lose battery in the camera. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, see, the rate of decay might change. We know that the sun goes through solar sunspot cycles every 11 years. You know, it gets a bunch of zits all over the sun and it causes trouble. Solar sunspot. Well, that affects the radiation coming off the sun, which affects the formation of carbon-14 here on the Earth. So you really have a rubber ruler here. How old is that? Well, how old would you like it to be? We can stretch it and make it whatever you want. Radiometric dating, this guy said, would not even have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. They really date things based on the stupid geologic column, which is that idea. I've got one right here somewhere. Yeah. They started teaching in 1830, 200 years ago, that the layers of the Earth are different ages and the top layer is younger. This was made up in 1830 and everybody swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. They don't stop and think. Guys, stop thinking. If the top layer is younger, where did it come from? Is it coming from outer space? Are layers being added to the Earth from space? If so, does that change the age? Every speck of dirt in the universe is the same age, whether 6,000 or 13.7 billion. It doesn't matter. It's all the same age. If I shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card younger? No. If I take these sand art toys, I got one here someplace. Here we go. If I flip this thing over, it'll make 10 or 15 or 20 layers in here in a matter of a few minutes. Is the top layer younger? No, they're all in here at the same time. There's no such thing as a geologic column. All over the world, petrified trees are found. Let me get to the right one here. There. 39. Here. Petrified trees are found standing up, connecting all the layers. Let me ask you a question, Kurt. How long does a dead tree stand up in your town before it falls over? A couple of years? Not millions of years, okay? Petrified trees in the standing position are found all over the world, going right through all these layers that they're claiming are different ages. I'm sorry, that's not common sense. It's certainly not science. Petrified trees in the vertical position are all over the world. There is no such thing as a geologic column. It does not exist, except in their imagination. Up in Birmingham, Alabama, north of me, I'm down in Lenox here. They have a coal mine. A friend of mine, one manager up there, he said, yeah, we find petrified trees standing up all the time, running through seams of coal. From one seam of coal through the rock, through another seam of coal. Petrified trees in the standing position. Guys, stop and think. Stop telling people these layers are different ages. That's not common sense. Here's one where the bottom is in a seam of coal, the top is in a different seam of coal. They don't get it. See, they don't want to get it. Because if the Bible's true, that makes a whole lot of changes in their lifestyle. I asked an atheist one time, I said, if I could prove to you the Bible is true, and you chose to believe it, would that change your lifestyle? He said, man, that would change everything. I said, have you decided you believe in evolution because you've got some scientific evidence, or because you like the freedom it gives you from God? He said, I like evolution because I'm horny. I said, sir, every male of every species, from termites to whales, understands that one, but it's not a reason to reject God. Maybe he designed that part too, you know? Okay. Anyway, go ahead, brother.
Well, all of these evidences, I think a lot of times atheists are looking for a smoking gun. And what they're not realizing is everything is part of a preponderance of evidence. So it's not just this one thing or just that other thing. It's all of the things combined. So that's kind of why I was talking about doing, 5 evidences. We've gone over some, maybe we'll go over more. There's just kind of a
Sure.
guideline.
Well,
But yeah, there's a preponderance of evidence. Yeah, the
right.
salt, that's a good one to go over that one.
I have a video series, 18 hours long, creation seminar series. You can get it for $50. When you're done watching it, you can return it and get your money back. I tell people when I started this ministry 35 years ago, back then it was videotapes, now it's DVD, I would loan them out to people. I learned right away Christians don't steal, but they borrow and never return. Okay. So I will sell it to you for $50 because I got to pay to produce the thing. Okay. And then when you're done, you can send it back, get your money back. And if you forget, I got the $50 and I'm going to go spend it on making some more. But video number 1 is titled The Age of the Earth. And this is my slide number 1. Let's see. I go through how to prove the Earth is not billions of years old. First of all, the Bible clearly teaches 6,000. The oldest written language, the oldest example of capital punishment, the oldest proof we have of any town, the salt in the oceans, the magnetic field, the spin of the Earth, the Sahara Desert. There's lots and lots of evidence. Take salt in the ocean as an example. Today, the oceans are 3.6% salt. They are gaining salt every day as the rivers run off the mountains carrying mineral salts into the ocean. Evaporation takes out only the water, leaves the salts behind. It's a well-known, well-studied phenomenon. The oceans are getting saltier. Nobody questions why or how. We know it's happening. But when they do the math on this and say, wow, they could have gone from completely fresh water to 3.6% salt in less than 5,000 years. See, during Noah's flood, the whole world was fresh water, no salt water. And some animals have had to adapt to salt water. There are now freshwater alligator crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles. Going from a freshwater croc to a saltwater croc is a minor change compared to going from a rock to a croc, which is what they believe, okay? There are saltwater bass and freshwater bass. I agree. Some have adapted to it. Some couldn't adapt. Maybe they all died out. Maybe they chose to stay in where the fresh water is. But the saltwater ocean outgassing water vapor fell as rain. This is how the evolutionists teach it. It rained for 4 billion years, made the oceans. Salinity developed from dissolved rock elements. Early acidic rain dissolved more crustal minerals than today. Why is the ocean salty? Well, it's gaining salt. Oceans cover 70% of the earth. 97% of the water is salt water. That's a lot of salt water on our planet. If the salt in the ocean could be removed and spread evenly over the whole earth, it would make a layer 500 feet thick, the height of a 40-story building. Okay? So I think they agree. The oceans are getting saltier. 35 parts per thousand, 3.5%, 3.6% salt, somewhere there. So it's a well-known phenomenon. We know how it happens. But it could have all happened in less than 5,000 years. So my question is, if the ocean is really millions or billions of years old, why aren't they saltier than they are? You know, Great Salt Lake in Utah is an example, or the Great Salt Lake in Israel, or Salton Sea, I'm sorry, the Dead Sea in Israel, and Great Salt Lake in Utah. They are much saltier. It's an example of what the whole world would be like if it really were billions of years old. There is no possible way, just based on the salt in the ocean, no possible way the world can be billions of years old. That's just one of about 30 different ways I show. Another one of my favorites is, let's see, the moon. Here we go. Where's the moon? The moon goes around the Earth once every 27 days. Well, it's 339,000 miles away, rounded off to 340,000 distance to the moon, okay? But the moon is moving away from the Earth. We're losing the moon about 1.5 inches every year. Here's a model of the moon, and I got a model of the Earth right here someplace. Yeah, here we go. Okay, these are approximately the right size, Earth and moon. The moon goes around the Earth, but the moon's getting further away. They know why. They can study it and measure it happening. Okay, we know the moon is moving away from the Earth. Well, I got an obvious question then. If the moon is getting further away from the Earth, does that mean that it used to be closer? Yeah. Well, how close can you get it before that starts to create a problem? Because the moon causes the tides. There have been many articles written on this. TheAtlantic.com did one. Moon's drifting away 1.5 inches a year. Moon is leaving us 1.5 inches a year. I feel like we're drifting apart. NASA did an article on that back in 2019. The moon's moving away 4 centimeters, about 1.5 inches, due to tidal interaction between the Earth and the moon. Moon is moving away 1.5 inches a year. I've never heard anybody try to refute that. We know that's what's happening. Okay, that means it used to be closer. The moon is gradually spiraling away from the Earth. Why is the moon leaving us? Maybe it doesn't like us. I don't know, but it's moving further away, okay? 4 centimeters per year. Moon is getting further from the Earth. Moon is getting further from the Earth. You can Google it. There's lots of articles on this. Nobody argues. But they don't stop and understand. If the moon was closer, this creates a number of problems. There's a law in physics called the inverse square law. If two objects are attracted to each other, like two magnets, or with the Earth moon, gravity pulling them together, the force, how strong they pull, is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. In English, that means if you brought the moon into 1/3 the distance, bring it back to 1/3. You take that fraction 1/3, flip it over, inverse it, and square it. What's 3 squared? 9. So if I brought the moon into 1/3 the distance, it would be 9 times the pull, which makes the tides really, really high on the Earth. Inverse square law applies with gravity. It applies with light. A good cameraman has to know about all that kind of stuff, how to get not to get a glare on the subject or something. It applies to magnets. Inverse square law applies to girls. When you're a certain distance away, you're attracted, you get closer, and now you're really attracted. And pretty soon, man, you can't overcome the resistance. Okay, so 1,000 years ago, the moon was 125 feet closer. A million years ago, 28 miles closer. 10 million, 284 million miles closer. 1 billion years ago, it was 28,000 miles closer. That, of course, is assuming that the recession rate is not slowing down, which it probably is. Okay? So the evolution of the lunar semi-major axis represents a well-known timescale problem. The lunar orbit collapses a little over 1 billion years ago, which means 1 billion years ago, they would snap together like two magnets. Okay, then why are we telling the kids the Earth and the Moon are 4.6 billion years old? Forget the Bible, just look at the science. It can't be 4.6. Pick a new number.
Yeah, that's really compelling. Plus, life be pretty hard to live on a
Well, if the
tidal
tide was going, yeah,
torrent.
tide would go up and down 500 feet every 6 hours, so that'd be another problem. Lunar semi-major axis presents a well-known timescale problem. It collapses 1 billion years ago. This has been known for a long time, and they just simply ignore it because they want billions of years. They need it to turn their frog to a prince.
Which that segues nicely into the other argument that they shoved down my throat going through public education. That's the fossil record. Oh, look at the humans becoming, we found an ape and this one, and they look more and more human. It's a big argument they use.
There is no such thing as a fossil record. There are fossils by the trillions. We have a museum here at Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox with all kinds of fossils. For example, here is a fossil clam in the closed position. It's fossilized closed. Well, fossils aren't forming today. And certainly when clams die, they open. The only way this could happen, we've got hundreds of them here in our museum, it had to be buried alive and buried fast. And it takes about a year or less for something to petrify or turn to stone. They've done it in the laboratory in 24 hours. Turns under pressure, turns something into stone in 24 hours. So it's not it doesn't take millions of years to fossilize. So the flood is probably what made all the fossils in the world 4,400 years ago, not billions of years ago. I'm sorry, I forgot your original question. No, I got off track there. What was it again?
Oh, I was just saying like like starting from Lucy, going on to
humans,
Cro-Magnon, all of that up the way to Homo sapien.
Well, this is imagination. Nobody's ever seen a human produce anything other than a human. One couple can have 10 kids and they're all very different from each other, but they're still human. And they're still within a range. There's this, Donald Trump's son is 6'9". Okay. That's a big boy for 18 years old. Okay. There have been people 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall. Robert Wadlow almost made 9 feet. So is there a limit? Have there ever been any humans born that are, 500 feet tall? No, there's a limit somewhere in there. Somewhere between 9 feet and 500, there's a limit. We will not cross that limit. How about getting smaller? Have there been pygmies and dwarfs born that are only 3 feet tall when they're full grown? Yeah. Has there been anybody born that survived that was a 1/4 inch tall when they're full grown? No. There's a limit, a minor and maximum limit. There's a limit with dogs. They've been trying to get, dogs. Let's say they got dogs now down to, hang Get this. There we go. Dogs, they've got dogs 4 feet tall, 44 inches tall. Still a dog. So, and dogs 4 inches tall. There's a limit, somewhere between 4 inches and 44 inches. All the dogs fall in that limit so far. But you would think they all came from an amoeba? They're a whole lot smaller than 4 inches. Amoeba are. And I say, look, you guys believe whatever you want, but that's not science. What we observe is there's limits. And they sure don't like that idea. So the fossils, there's no record. None of the fossils that have ever been found talk. None of them. None of them have a date stamped on them. We have to put our interpretation on them, okay? And if you're dating them by the geologic column, then you're really, really stupid because there's no such thing as a geologic column. And we go through all that in my video number 4, lies in the textbooks. They just plain lie to the students. And if you find a fossil in the dirt and you say, wow, this looks like it's half human and half ape. Let's say you find one that's looks half human and half ape. Okay? What does that prove? You can't prove that fossil had any children. You can't prove it had children that lived. You sure couldn't prove it had children that lived that were different. And maybe you just found something that went extinct. So far, all the animals, every farmer on the planet today will tell you cows produce cows and dogs produce dogs and chickens produce chickens. There are simply no exceptions. So evolution is only an imaginary religion that you think it might have happened a long time ago. I don't have a whole lot more time, brother, but let's go give a couple more evidences for young Earth, or what would you like?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I cover quite a few. Let's see. The ice cores. I was in Denver, Colorado, and they said, hey, would you like to go see the National Ice Core Laboratory? Somebody in the crowd happened to work there. I said, well, yeah. They go up to the Greenland and the North Pole and the South Pole, and they drill holes through the ice. And they save the hole. The core they drill out, like an apple coring machine. They got a big, long pipe. They drill it down in and suck it up, pull it up, and it brings up a core, an ice core. And the ice cores have rings on them, like tree rings, right? No question. I've studied this intently. Ice core samples yanked from Antarctic glacier. Here they are. They store them in styrofoam and aluminum tubes, stainless steel tubes. When they drilled, they these rings on them. There's a snowpack here, stratified, made up of layers similar to the geologic layers of the Grand Canyon. The snowpack stratigraphy tells the history of the season. It can warm up for a little minute and melt the top, and then it refreezes and makes clear ice. If it snows and just packs down, it makes milky colored ice. Multiple stacked layers of wind-drifted snow. There are 50 different Eskimo words for snow. There's 9 different types of snow. There's powder snow and crud snow and all this kind of stuff. Who cares? Okay. So they drill down and they get these rings. And the evolutionists look at this and say each of those rings is a different year, annual rings. They'll say, well, in the summer, it melts and the free freezes on top and makes clear ice. Then in the winter, it packs. And they'll look at that and say, you can count the rings and tell how old the glaciers are. No, you cannot. Those are not annual rings. The deepest ice core they've ever drilled, this article said, in Greenland and Antarctica, it's consistently cold. The annual rings are very thin. Watch how they slip this in here. The deepest cores measure 10,000 feet, showing the climate was there 135,000 years ago. This whole argument is based on the false idea that they're annual rings. When I went to the Ice Core Laboratory in Denver, I went in, they showed me the rings. I said, look, you think those are annual rings? The summer is the melts and refreezes to clear ice. So this is summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter. This is baloney. A warm day and a cold night would do the same thing. You'd get 7 layers in 1 week. So I went to Middleborough, Kentucky, where the guys dug out the airplane. In World War II, several P-38 airplanes landed on the ice in Greenland. They ran out of gas. So they rescued the pilots and took them on, fought the war, and forgot the planes. Somebody got the brilliant idea, hey, there's brand new airplanes from World War II sitting on the ice. Let's go get them. Okay? So the Popular Mechanics, exciting story trying to find the P-38 Echo. 6 undiscovered aircraft of the lost squadron. So they found them using ground-penetrating radar. They melted a hole down to get to it. You can read the article of the lost squadron. where the airplanes landed right there in the crash site in Greenland. All right. They found them using ground penetrating radar. They melted a hole down to get to one of the airplanes, took it apart, and brought the pieces up through the hole and put it back together. And it flies today in air shows in Middleborough, Kentucky. They were under 263 feet of ice in 48 years. Mm-hmm. Let's see, World War II airplanes covered, this article says 250 feet of ice, but it's like 263. They melted holes down, took the plane apart, and brought the pieces up and put it together in Middleborough, Kentucky. In the ground, under the ice anyway, for 48 years. 263 feet down. That's 5.5 feet a year. The deepest ice core they've done is 10,000 years. They said it was 135,000 years. No, that's 1,800 years worth of ice. Deeper ice is pressed into finer layers because of the pressure. So really 4,400 is no problem to account for all the ice. I visited there in 1999. I talked to Bob Carden. He's one of the guys who dug out the airplane and took it and put it back together. When they went down 63 feet, they had a plywood cover left by somebody who back in 1983 had tried to melt down to get to it. They went down 62 feet and gave up, ran out of money or something. So they put plywood over their hole and it kept snowing on top of their plywood. In 8 years, let's see, 62 feet of ice in 8 years. That's 8 feet a year. I said, Bob, were there lots of rings, clear, milky on top of the airplane? He said, yeah, there were 30 to 40 rings in the last 9 years. I said, some people are saying these are annual rings. He said, those aren't annual rings. There's hundreds of these annual rings on top of these airplanes that had only been there 48 years. And so they do all the annual layers. They're still teaching this, and it's the purpose of this lie is to get people to believe in global warming. And we got to save the planet. We got to kill half the people, to save the planet. It's not annual rings. You can get several rings in one day. Ice cores correspond to years and seasons. No, they don't. That's just pure propaganda, dating a core. Okay. Anyway, so I cover about 30 or 40 different scientific ways to show, look, guys, I'm sorry, it's not billions of years old. If you need billions of years, move to a new planet and start over because you can't have it here on Earth.
Well, that's excellent, Dr. Hovind, and just thank you for providing those evidences. Now, the real reason, or the biggest reason that I do any of this, and I'm sure you as well, is to get the gospel out to people, to help them believe.
Right.
And so if you could put your preacher hat on for a second and just deliver the gospel, give an invitation to our audiences, I'd love to wrap up the show with that.
All right. Let's see. Let me go to slide number 689. Okay. There. Jesus answered and said, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, talking about Adam and Eve? That was the beginning. Some people say, oh, no, the world was here for billions of years before that. Well, you calling Jesus a liar? In the Ten Commandments, God wrote on a rock with his own finger, in 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is. He said he did it in 6 days. I think we're going to stand before God Judgment Day, and some of you atheists are going to say, I'm sorry, Lord. It's too late now. You think your little scientists are smarter than me? He's going to say, depart from me. There's evidence that's overwhelming that God's word is true. And it's true about the creation. It's also true about what's going to happen at the end of the world. Let me get up here to the end. He promised he's going to judge the world again one day. It says in 2 Peter chapter 3, let's see, 1537. By the way, you can get all my slides on a thumb drive for $100 if you go to drdino.com. If you want 50,000 slides that I put together over the years, save you a whole lot of research. Okay, just go to DRDINO, Dr. Dino. The Bible says there would be scoffers in the last days who would be willingly ignorant of how God made the heavens and the earth. And they're ignorant of the flood. It was overflowed with water. And they're ignorant of the coming judgment of God. Ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment. I wrote a book on the topic, what on earth is about to happen, about the future, what the Bible says anyway about the future. So God made it all in 6 days, and we're going to stand before him. If you died today, where would you go? You could die today. They gave women the right to drive, but 100 years ago, but anybody could die today. It's a joke, honey. Relax, okay? He that winneth souls is wise. So I think that the Bible is very clear. If you accept Christ as your Savior, you your sins are forgiven. I tell I can't find the slide right now, but here's an acorn on my desk here. This little acorn knows how to make a tree. All the scientists in the world today cannot make a tree. They're dumber than a nut. Here, this nut can make a tree, but it can't do its job if it can't get into the dirt. Laying here on my desk, it'll lay here for years, waiting and hoping somebody sticks it in the dirt so it can do this job. But nobody does. It'll just stay here for years. This knows how to make a tree if the dirt will receive it. We are like the dirt, and Jesus is the seed. If we will receive him into our heart, bingo, now the growth starts, and you can become a child of God. You get born into his family. February 9th, 1969, I prayed a simple prayer. I said, Lord, I am a sinner. I deserve to go to hell, but I believe you died for me. I believe you rose from the dead. Would you please forgive me? Would you please come live in my heart and save me? And that simple invitation for Jesus to come into my heart got the seed planted. And now I'm going to heaven because of what Jesus did, not because of what I did. Getting born, you got born because of what somebody else did. You probably had nothing to do with it. I bet you didn't even know what was going on when you got born or conceived, okay? So that was somebody else did that. You get born again because of what Jesus did. Now you grow. That takes a long time to grow. That you can read your Bible and and learn more about the book. So that's our efforts make us grow, but not the birth part. The Bible says if you receive him, you get born, you become a child of God. So just pray a simple prayer and say, Lord, I'd like to receive you into my heart. I'd like you to forgive me and save me. That's how that starts the process. Now, let me warn you, when Jesus comes in, he might want to rearrange the furniture. He might want to, take over. He might want to say, sorry, don't do that anymore. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? You read the
Remember it
book and
happened.
say, oh no, he don't want that. No, he don't want that. Okay. Anyway, keep up
Amen.
the good work, brother. But I would encourage all your listeners, man, if you've never received Christ, do that. This is almost Christmas coming up. Make Christmas your birthday into God's family.
Amen. Yeah, that's
Amen.
great, great message. Thank you so much, Dr. Ovind. And again, this channel is called How to Think. So I hope that anybody watching, that Dr. Hovind here gave you some things to think about. Because for me, I had never heard any of that for 30 something years of my life. And for some reason, this information gets put on the back burner. People reject it and people don't hear it. And so I'm trying to put it out there best I can. And God's used you greatly, Dr. Hovind, for that purpose. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for your ministry, and God bless you.
Well, thank you. Come down and visit our dinosaur adventure land in Lenox, Alabama. We're straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles. And we have a museum, a science center. We're building a Noah's Ark. We have all kinds of cool stuff here. It's all free. 30 cabins you can stay in. We'll feed you. If you stay more than 2 days, we're going to put you to work, give you a hammer. There's lots to do around here. Come on down and visit. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr.
All
Hovind.
right.
And yes, anybody watching, go to drdino.com, and there's a lot of great products there, a lot of good information as well. And so
Thank you.
God bless you
All
all.
right.
Have a good day.
Thank you, brother. All right. Thank you. I got to get to the tour here before they close.